Okay, I'm overdue to change the fork oil. So last time I did it, it was a bit of a chore, so I thought I'd do a video here to help you out. First things first, got the workspace cleared out, and I got a piece of cardboard put down in case any oil squirts out onto the ground, because my wife parks her car here, and if she sees a drip of oil underneath it, she's gonna panic. So got some cardboard down to catch that so she doesn't get alarmed. I've got my lift in position, and I've got a buddy that's going to come over and help me pump the forks. I did it by myself last time, but that was kind of a pain in the ass. So this time I'm going to have somebody to sit on there and pump the forks up and down while I'm down here catching the fluid that comes out. I've got a homemade measuring container. That way I can see exactly how much fork oil comes out, and got just a little bit of grease so that when I put this drain screw back in, I can grease it so it doesn't get seized up in there.
Now you want to be very careful here. The stock drain screw is extremely soft and it's very easy to strip. If it gets stripped, you might end up having to extract a broken screw out of your forks, and that is no fun. Now have somebody sit on the bike, stand it upright, and start pressing forward. You can use the brake to keep the wheel from rolling, and just try to squeeze those forks, and as you do, it'll pump the oil out. You want to keep on doing this until you don't have a stream of oil coming out anymore, but rather just a little bit of spray and some bubbles. That way you know it's completely empty. Use the homemade measuring cup, or if you want to use one of your good measuring cups from your wife's cabinet, you can do that. But use your measuring cup to see how much oil comes out of each side. On my forks, it was just about 12 ounces of oil on each side. After you get done with one side, drain the oil from the other side before you take the top of the fork tubes off. Grease the threads of your drain screw, that way when you put it in, it doesn't get seized up in there and you'll be able to get it out next time. Tighten it up with a screwdriver and make it snug, but not over tight. It's always easier to tighten it a little bit more if it leaks than it is to try to fix it if you break the head off.
It's Harley Davidson, but the socket that you need to get the top of those fork tubes off is a 35 millimeter. So go down to your auto parts store and buy yourself a 35 millimeter socket. That way you can put enough downward pressure on the top of that fork tube and still turn it.
First things first, use a lift or a jack to lift up the front wheel of your bike to take all the weight off of the forks. That way when you take the tops off the fork tubes, the spring doesn't shoot off and hit you in the face. I don't know what kind of handlebars or risers you have, but I made these myself, and they're in the way of the top of the fork tubes. So I got to take the handlebars off before I can remove the tops of the fork tubes. Once your handlebars are out of the way, use the 35 millimeter socket on a ratchet or breaker bar and keep your hand over the top of it with some force. And slowly start loosening it, because once you get that thing unthreaded, that spring is going to want to shoot it right out. The manual says to use Harley Davidson Type E hydraulic fork oil, so that's exactly what I used. As you saw, I got about 12 ounces out of each side. A bottle of fork oil has a little bit more than 12 ounces, so what I did was pour out just a little bit out of each bottle until I could see on the side of the bottle that I had exactly 12 ounces, and then that's exactly what I put into each side. Compressing the springs and putting the tops back on the fork tubes is by far the most difficult part of this job. If you're lucky and strong enough, you can do it by yourself. You might need to get some help because you need enough downward pressure to compress the spring and get that thread started without cross threading it, and it takes a lot of downward pressure. So you can go about it like this, using the socket and a wrench. You might have to use a wooden dowel or something like that to press it down while somebody else turns an open-ended wrench on the side. Just figure out what's going to work for you, and good luck. After you have one side closed up, go ahead and go over to the other side and open the top of that one up and do it all over again. After you have both sides closed back up and filled with oil, put your handlebars back into place. Now have your buddy sit back on the bike and hold the brake and bounce the forks up and down, and you watch the drain screws to make sure that there aren't any leaks coming out. If you don't have any leaks at the top or the bottom, then you're done.